The alarm bell rang across the metal corridors of Nexus Prime at exactly 600 hours. Kim Tae-ho rolled out of his narrow bunk and landed on the cold floor with practiced silence. His roommate Park Ji-woo was already awake, sitting on the edge of his bed and staring at the small window that showed the endless black of space. "Another day in paradise," Ji-woo said quietly. Tae-ho pulled on his gray cadet uniform and checked the mirror. At 19 years old, he looked younger than most of the other species in the academy. His black hair was cut short according to regulations, and his brown eyes held a determination that had kept him going through 6 months of the hardest training in the galaxy. The Galactic Military Academy floated in neutral space, far from any home world. It was a massive structure built from white metal and crystal, designed to house cadets from dozens of different species. Humans had only been part of the Galactic Alliance for 50 years, and they were still proving themselves worthy of respect. Tae-ho and Ji-woo walked down the main corridor toward the dining hall. The walls were lined with portraits of famous military leaders from across the galaxy. There were tall, proud saurians with their scaled green skin. There were the insect-like Chitauri with their sharp claws and compound eyes. There were blue-skinned, Aquarians, and the rock-like granite people. At the very end of the hall, almost hidden in a corner, was a single human portrait. "Look at that," Ji-woo pointed to the human picture. "Admiral Chen from the Border Wars. 1 human out of 50 portraits." "Better than 0, Tae-ho replied, but he understood his friend's frustration. The dining hall was enormous, with tables arranged by species. Humans sat together at 3 small tables near the back. The saurian tables took up the center of the room, their large bodies requiring more space. The Chitauri clustered together, their clicking language filling the air with sharp sounds. Tae-ho grabbed a tray and moved through the food line. The academy served nutrition blocks designed to meet the dietary needs of all species. For humans, they tasted like cardboard, but they provided everything a body needed to survive. As he walked toward the human section, a large shadow fell across his path. Krell, a Chitauri cadet, stepped in front of him. Krell stood nearly 7 feet tall, his forearms ending in sharp claws. His compound eyes reflected the dining hall lights like tiny mirrors. "Move, Softskin." Krell clicked in heavily accented galactic standard. "Real warriors eat first." Several other cadets turned to watch. This had become a daily routine. Krell would find small ways to humiliate the human cadets, and the instructors would look the other way. After all, humans were the newest members of the Alliance, and some species questioned whether they belonged in the military at all. Tae-ho stepped aside without a word. He had learned that fighting back only made things worse. The academy had rules about interspecies conflicts, but they were rarely enforced when humans were involved. "Smart choice," Krell clicked, his mandibles spreading in what might have been a smile. "Maybe you are learning your place after all." Ji-woo clenched his fists, but Tae-ho shook his head slightly. "Not here, not now." They found seats at their usual table with the other human cadets. There were only 15 humans in the entire academy, compared to over 300 cadets from other species. "Same thing every day," muttered Park Min-ho, another human cadet. "When are we going to stand up to them?" "When we graduate and prove ourselves in real combat," said Lee Dobbin, the only female human at the academy. She was training in military medicine rather than combat, but she attended the same classes. "Fighting here just gives them more reasons to say we don't belong." Tae-ho ate his nutrition block in silence, thinking about home. Sol Colony was a small settlement on the edge of human space. His parents had saved for years to send him to the academy. They believed that humans needed representatives in the galactic military, people who could show the other species what humanity was capable of. After breakfast, the cadets moved to their first class of the day. Tactical analysis was taught by Commander Voss, a saurian with dark green scales and yellow eyes. Voss had served in 3 different wars and had scars across his face to prove it. "Today we will discuss the Battle of Kepler Station," Commander Voss announced, his voice deep and rough. "Who can tell me why the Alliance forces failed in their initial assault?" Several hands went up, including Tae-ho's, but Voss called on Krell instead. The Alliance commanders were weak, Krell clicked. They hesitated when they should have attacked with full force. Partially correct, Voss replied. But there were other factors. Yes, Cadet Kim. Taeho stood up, feeling the weight of dozens of alien eyes on him. The Alliance failed because they didn't account for the asteroid field. Their larger ships couldn't maneuver effectively, and the enemy used the rocks as cover for ambush attacks. Voss nodded slowly. Correct. The terrain was as important as the enemy forces. This is something many young officers forget. They focus on weapons and numbers but ignore the battlefield itself. Krell's compound eyes fixed on Taeho with obvious annoyance. The human had given the better answer, and everyone in the class knew. The lesson continued with analysis of different battle scenarios. Taeho found that he had a natural talent for seeing patterns and weaknesses that others missed. While his human body was smaller and weaker than most of his classmates, his mind could process complex tactical situations with surprising speed. After class, the cadets moved to physical training. This was where humans struggled the most. The ISA gym was designed for species with natural armor, enhanced strength, or multiple limbs. Human bodies seemed fragile in comparison. Instructor Zald, a massive granite being made of living rock, called the cadets to attention. Today we practice unarmed combat. Pair up with someone from your own species group. This was standard procedure. Different species had different physical capabilities, so they usually trained separately. But as Zald looked around the room, he frowned. We have an odd number in each group. Cadet Krell, you will spar with Cadet Kim. The gym fell silent. Cross-species. Sparring was dangerous and rarely allowed. Krell's natural armor and forearms gave him an enormous advantage over any human. Sir, Taeho spoke up carefully. Regulations state that cross-species combat requires special safety equipment. Are you afraid, Softskin? Krell clicked loudly. Perhaps you should return to your little colony and leave war to real soldiers. The other cadets began to murmur among themselves. Some looked excited at the prospect of seeing a human get beaten down. Others seemed uncomfortable with the obvious mismatch. Instructor Zald considered for a moment. Very well. We will use standard protective gear. This will be educational for all cadets to see different fighting styles. Taeho felt his heart rate increase, but he kept his expression calm. He had trained in martial arts since childhood, but he had never faced an opponent like Krell. The Chitauri was not only larger and stronger, but his species had evolved as hunters. Violence was in their nature. As the other cadets formed a circle around the sparring area, Jiwoo caught Taeho's arm. You don't have to do this, he whispered. Everyone knows it's not fair. That's exactly why I have to do it, Taeho replied. If I back down now, every human cadet will pay the price. He stepped into the sparring circle and faced Krell. The Chitauri was flexing all four arms, his claws extended. His compound eyes reflected the gym lights like a kaleidoscope. I will try not to break too many of your bones, soft skin, Krell clicked. But accidents happen in training. Taeho took a fighting stance and waited. Around the circle, cadets from dozens of species watched with interest. Some had never seen a human fight before. Most expected this to be over very quickly. What none of them realized, including Taeho himself, was that this moment would change everything. Not just for the two cadets in the circle, but for the entire relationship between humanity and the galaxy. The fight was about to begin, and with it, the first hint of what humans were truly capable of when pushed to their limits. The sparring match lasted exactly 3 minutes and 47 seconds. When it ended, Krell was lying on his back with all four arms pinned beneath Taeho's knees. The human cadet had used the Chitauri's size against him, dodging the powerful swipes and using momentum to bring the larger opponent down. The gym was completely silent. No one had expected a human to defeat a Chitauri in hand-to-hand combat. Even Instructor Zald looked surprised, his rocky features showing something that might have been respect. Taeho stood up and helped Krell to his feet. The Chitauri's compound eyes were dim with embarrassment and growing anger. Being defeated by what his species considered prey was the worst possible humiliation. Lucky strike, soft skin. Krell clicked quietly. but his voice carried a dangerous edge. This changes nothing. Over the following weeks, the tension between Krell and the human cadets grew worse. The Chitauri began gathering support from other species who shared his views about human weakness. They started small acts of sabotage, hiding equipment, changing duty rosters, making sure humans got the worst assignments. Tae-ho tried to ignore the harassment and focus on his studies. He excelled in every academic subject, earning top marks in tactical analysis, military history, and space navigation. His test scores were among the highest in the academy, but his success only made the other species more resentful. "They think we are trying to show off," Jiwoo said one evening as they studied in their room. "We cannot win. If we fail, they say we are weak. If we succeed, they say we are arrogant." "Let them think what they want," Tae-ho replied, not looking up from his tactical manual. "Results speak louder than opinions." But the situation was taking its toll on all the human cadets. Lee Da-bin reported that several humans had come to the medical bay with stress-related symptoms. Park Min-ho had requested a transfer back to human space, though his application was denied. Everything changed on a cold morning in late autumn. Commander Voss entered the tactical classroom with an announcement that made every cadet sit up straight. "In 2 days we will conduct a live-fire exercise," he said, his scaled face showing no emotion. "You will use actual plasma weapons set to low power. The exercise will test everything you have learned about combat tactics, teamwork, and decision-making under pressure." The cadets began talking excitedly among themselves. Live-fire exercises were rare and dangerous. They were only conducted when the instructors believed the cadets were ready for real combat situations. "You will be divided into pairs," Voss continued. "Each pair will face off in simulated combat scenarios. The weapons will be set to training mode, which means they can cause pain and temporary paralysis, but should not cause permanent injury." Krell's compound eyes immediately fixed on Tae-ho. The Chitauri had been waiting for an opportunity like this. In unarmed combat, technique and speed could overcome size and strength, but with weapons, the natural advantages of his species would be overwhelming. After class, Krell approached Commander Voss directly. Several other cadets, including Tae-ho, lingered nearby to listen. "Sir, I request permission to face the human in the live-fire exercise," Krell clicked formally. Voss looked from Krell to Tae-ho, his yellow eyes thoughtful. "Cross-species combat with live weapons is against regulations, Cadet. The risk of serious injury is too high." "With respect, sir," Krell replied. "How will any of us learn to fight real enemies if we only face our own species? In actual war, we will not have the luxury of fighting only similar opponents." This was a clever argument, and Voss knew it. The academy was supposed to prepare cadets for real combat, where they might face any type of enemy. Several other instructors had gathered to listen to the conversation. "The human cadets are weak," added Vex, a Saurian cadet who supported Krell. "If they cannot handle training combat, how can they serve in real battles?" Tae-ho felt the weight of everyone's attention. This was a trap, but it was also an opportunity. If he refused, it would confirm every stereotype about human weakness. If he accepted, he would face an opponent with significant natural advantages. "I accept the challenge," Tae-ho said quietly. Commander Voss studied him for a long moment. "Very well. But there will be additional safety measures. Medical personnel will monitor the exercise closely, and I will personally oversee the match." Word of the upcoming battle spread throughout the academy within hours. Cadets from every species began placing bets on the outcome. Most favored Krell by a wide margin. The few who supported Tae-ho did so more out of sympathy than actual belief in his chances. That evening, Jiwoo tried to convince his friend to reconsider. "This is different from the sparring match," he said as they sat in their room. "With plasma weapons, his natural armor gives him a huge advantage. Your speed and technique will not matter if you cannot hurt him." "I know the risks," Tae-ho replied. "But backing down now would hurt every human in the academy. They already think we are weak. If I refuse to fight, it proves their point." Lee Da-bin joined them later, bringing medical readings she had taken during previous training exercises. I have been studying the differences between human and Chitauri physiology, she said, spreading datasheets across Taiho's desk. Krell's natural armor can absorb most low-power plasma blasts. His species evolved on a world with dangerous electrical storms, so they developed resistance to energy weapons. What about weak spots? Taiho asked. The joints between armor plates, but they are small targets, and his compound eyes are vulnerable, but aiming for them would be considered attempted murder under Academy rules. The three humans spent hours discussing strategy, but every plan seemed to lead to the same conclusion. In a straight fight with plasma weapons, Krell had every advantage. The next day, news of the match reached the Academy's senior staff. Some instructors questioned whether the fight should be allowed to proceed. Others argued that it would be valuable training for both cadets. Admiral Kane, the Academy's human liaison officer, requested a private meeting with Taiho. Kane was one of only 3 humans on the Academy's staff, and he had fought in several campaigns during the border wars. "Son, I know what you are trying to prove," Kane said as they sat in his small office. "But sometimes the best way to serve your people is to live to fight another day. Sir, with respect, how many other chances will humans get to prove themselves?" Taiho replied. "If I back down now, they will use it as evidence that we do not belong here." Kane was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the stars. Finally, he spoke again. "Your parents sent you here to represent humanity. That is a heavy burden for someone so young." "Yes, sir, but it is a burden I accepted when I put on this uniform." The Admiral nodded slowly. "Very well, but remember that courage and stupidity often look the same from a distance. Make sure you know which one you are choosing." The night before the exercise, Taiho could not sleep. He stood at the window of his room looking out at the black space surrounding the Academy. Somewhere in that darkness was Earth, the small blue world where humanity had struggled and survived for millions of years. Jiwoo joined him at the window. "Are you afraid?" his friend asked quietly. Taiho considered the question honestly. "Yes," he said finally, "but fear is not the enemy. Giving up is the enemy." Neither of them spoke about the possibility that this might be their last conversation, but both understood that tomorrow would change everything one way or another. In another part of the Academy, Krell was also preparing for the battle. Unlike Taiho, the Chitauri felt no fear. His species had evolved as predators, and hunting came naturally to them. Tomorrow, he would finally put the soft-skinned humans in their proper place. The stage was set for a confrontation that would echo throughout the galaxy. The combat arena was smaller than Taiho had expected. Metal walls rose 15 feet high, covered with sensors that would track every movement and energy discharge. Above them, a viewing gallery held nearly every cadet and instructor in the Academy. The air hummed with excitement and tension. Commander Voss stood in the center of the arena holding 2 plasma rifles. The weapons were sleek and deadly, designed to fire concentrated energy bolts that could punch through most armor. Red lights on their sides indicated they were set to training mode. "Cadets, approach and receive your weapons," Voss commanded. Taiho walked forward, his boots echoing on the metal floor. His heart was beating fast, but his hands were steady. Across from him, Krell moved with the confident stride of a predator. The Chitauri's forearms flexed as he reached for his rifle. "Remember," Voss said as he handed them the weapons, "these are training settings. The blasts will cause pain and temporary paralysis, but they should not cause permanent damage. The match ends when one cadet can no longer continue or when I call a halt." Taiho took his rifle and checked the power settings. The display showed training mode just as Voss had said. The weapon felt heavier than he had expected, but balanced well in his hands. "Take your positions," Voss ordered, stepping back to the edge of the arena. The 2 cadets moved to opposite corners. Above them, the viewing gallery was packed with spectators. Taiho could see Jiwoo pressed against the glass, his face tight with worry. Lee Dobbin stood near the medical station, her equipment ready. "Begin on my mark," Voss announced. 3, 2, 1, engage. Krell moved immediately, using his forearms to aim and fire while also seeking cover behind a metal barrier. His first Shot missed Teho by inches, leaving a smoking mark on the wall behind him. Teho rolled to his left and took cover behind his own barrier. The arena was designed with obstacles that provided limited protection, forcing the combatants to move and expose themselves to attack. For the first minute, they exchanged careful shots, each trying to find an opening. Krell's natural armor absorbed 2 hits that would have dropped a human, while Teho relied on speed and agility to avoid taking damage. Then something changed in Krell's behavior. The Chitauri began moving more aggressively, taking risks that seemed unnecessary. His compound eyes gleamed with an intensity that went beyond normal competition. What the spectators could not see was the small device Krell had hidden in his secondary right hand. While everyone watched the main battle, he quickly attached it to his rifle. The device was a power amplifier, illegal in training but nearly impossible to detect once installed. In the viewing gallery, several cadets noticed that Krell seemed to be doing something with his weapon, but the angle made it difficult to see clearly. Commander Voss was focused on the overall battle and missed the quick manipulation. "Is he adjusting his rifle?" Jiwoo asked Lee Da-bin. "I cannot tell from here," she replied, but her medical scanners were picking up strange energy readings from Krell's position. Back in the arena, Teho was beginning to understand that something was wrong. Krell's shots were hitting the barriers with much more force than they should. The training mode blasts should have left small scorch marks, but instead they were burning deep holes in the metal. When he tried to call out to Commander Voss, Krell fired a rapid series of shots that forced him to take cover. The Chitauri was deliberately preventing him from communicating with the referee. "What is wrong, soft skin?" Krell clicked loudly, his voice carrying across the arena. "Are you finally realizing that you do not belong here?" Teho knew he had to end this quickly. If Krell had somehow modified his weapon, continuing the fight was extremely dangerous. He decided to take a calculated risk, exposing himself to draw Krell into the open where Voss could see what was happening. He stepped out from behind his barrier, rifle raised but not aimed directly at Krell. It was a gesture that should have indicated surrender or a desire to talk. Instead, Krell saw it as the perfect opportunity he had been waiting for. The Chitauri raised his modified rifle and aimed directly at Teho's chest. His compound eyes reflected the arena lights as he squeezed the trigger. The weapon discharged with a sound, like thunder. The energy bolt that hit Teho was not the low-power training blast it should have been. It was a full-power shot capable of killing most species instantly. The bolt tore through his uniform and into his chest, the impact lifting him off his feet and throwing him backward. Teho hit the arena floor hard, blood spreading beneath him. His rifle clattered away across the metal surface. In the viewing gallery, spectators gasped and shouted. Some looked satisfied that the arrogant human had finally been put in his place. Others seemed shocked by the obvious brutality of the attack. Commander Voss started forward, but Krell was not finished. The Chitauri walked slowly toward Teho's motionless body, his weapon still raised. "This is what happens to soft-skins who forget their place," Krell announced to the watching crowd. "Let this be a lesson to all humans. You are prey, not predators." In the medical station, Lee Da-bin's instruments were screaming warnings. The energy discharge had been far beyond training levels. She started to run toward the arena entrance, but the battle was still officially in progress. On the arena floor, Teho lay in a growing pool of his own blood. The blast had torn through his chest, missing his heart by less than an inch. His breathing was shallow and his pulse was weak. By all rights, he should have been dead. But something strange was happening. Inside his body, something the aliens in the academy did not understand about human physiology. Second one. Teho's heart stopped beating. His blood pressure dropped to nearly 0. Brain activity began to slow as oxygen stopped flowing to his vital organs. Second. 5. Deep in his genetic code, ancient survival mechanisms began to activate. Humans had evolved on a world where death was always close, where the ability to survive impossible trauma meant the difference between extinction and continuation. Second 10. His body began rerouting blood flow around the damaged areas. Cells, that should have died instead, went into a state of suspended animation, waiting for repair systems to activate. Second 15. Adrenaline flooded his system at levels that would have been toxic to most species. His healing factor, dormant in normal times, began working at an incredible rate. Second 20. His heart began beating again, slowly at first, then stronger. The hole in his chest started to close as his body cannibalized other tissues to create new muscle and skin. Second 23. Taeho's eyes opened. Krell was standing directly over him, weapon pointed at his head, preparing to deliver what he thought would be a finishing shot. The Chitauri was speaking to the crowd, explaining how this proved human weakness. "You see how easily they break," Krell was saying. "This is why humans should not serve alongside real warriors," but his words died in his throat as Taeho sat up. The human moved slowly, blood still covering his torn uniform. The hole in his chest was visible, but no longer bleeding. He reached up with one hand and wiped blood from his face, never taking his eyes off Krell. In the viewing gallery, absolute silence fell. Even the most arrogant alien cadets felt something cold touch their hearts as they watched a being they had pronounced dead climb to his feet. Commander Voss stood frozen, his yellow eyes wide with disbelief. In 30 years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. Krell stumbled backward, his compound eyes reflecting terror for the first time in his life. The weapon in his hand suddenly felt inadequate. How do you kill something that should already be dead? Taeho stood completely upright now, steady on his feet despite the massive trauma his body had just endured. He looked at Krell with calm, dark eyes that held no anger, no fear, and no mercy. He began walking toward the Chitauri, each step deliberate and unhurried. Blood dripped from his torn uniform, but he showed no sign of pain or weakness. For the first time in galactic history, an alien species was learning what humans meant when they talked about refusing to die. The arena had become completely silent, except for the sound of Taeho's boots on the metal floor. Every eye in the academy was fixed on the impossible sight of a human who had survived what should have been certain death. Krell raised his weapon again, but his hands were shaking. The predator had become the prey, and both of them knew it. Taeho continued walking toward Krell, his steps slow and steady. The Chitauri raised his modified weapon again, but his forearms were trembling. He had just watched something impossible happen, and his predator instincts were screaming at him to run. "Stay back," Krell clicked desperately. "I will shoot again." Taeho did not respond. He did not even acknowledge that Krell had spoken. His dark eyes remained fixed on the alien, and his expression showed no emotion at all. The silence was more frightening than any threat could have been. In the viewing gallery, cadets from dozens of species pressed against the glass. Many had never seen real fear in a Chitauri before. The insect-like aliens were natural hunters, evolved to be apex predators on their homeworld. But now one of them was backing away from what they had always considered prey. Commander Voss finally broke from his shock and started to intervene. "Stop the match," he called out. "Medical emergency." But Taeho held up one hand without looking away from Krell. The gesture was clear. This was not finished. Krell fired his weapon again, aiming directly at Taeho's head. The modified energy bolt should have vaporized the human's skull instantly. Instead, Taeho moved his head slightly to the left and the blast passed harmlessly by his ear. The movement was so small and so perfectly timed that it seemed impossible. How could someone react that quickly to a plasma bolt? The energy moved at nearly the speed of light, but somehow Taeho had avoided it as if he could see the future. What the aliens did not understand was that human survival instincts, when pushed to their absolute limit, could achieve things that seemed supernatural. Taeho's near-death experience had awakened something in his brain that allowed him to process information faster than should have been possible. Krell fired again and again, but each shot missed by inches. Taeho continued, walking forward, never breaking his steady pace. He was not dodging dramatically or diving for cover. He simply moved just enough to avoid each blast, as if he knew exactly where they would go before Krell pulled the trigger. "How is he doing that?" whispered Vex, the Saurian cadet who had supported Krell earlier. His scaled face showed confusion and growing fear. Humans are not supposed to be that fast, clicked another Chitauri cadet. Our weapons are designed to kill anything that moves. In the medical station, Lee Dobbin was monitoring readings from sensors throughout the arena. What she saw made no sense according to any known biology. Taeho's brain activity was showing patterns she had never seen before. His reflexes were operating at speeds that should have been impossible for any organic life form. Krell's weapon finally ran out of energy. The power cell was drained from the constant firing and the illegal modifications. He stared at the dead rifle in his hands, then looked up at Taeho, who was now only 5 feet away. Please. Krell clicked quietly. I surrender. Taeho stopped walking. For a moment, the arena was completely silent. Everyone waited to see what the human would do. Would he show mercy? Would he demand justice? Would he walk away and let the instructors handle the situation? Instead, Taeho reached out with one hand and gently took the weapon from Krell's trembling grip. He examined it carefully, turning it over to see the illegal modification device that the Chitauri had attached. His expression did not change, but something cold flickered in his dark eyes. Then, without any visible effort, Taeho crushed the rifle in his bare hands. The sound of bending metal filled the arena as the weapon collapsed like paper. Sparks flew from the broken power systems, and pieces of the modification device fell to the floor. When Taeho opened his hands, nothing remained but twisted scrap. The viewing gallery erupted in shocked voices. Plasma rifles were made from military-grade alloys designed to withstand incredible stress. No organic being should have been able to destroy one with their bare hands. Krell stared at the twisted metal, then back at Taeho's calm face. The human had just demonstrated strength that was completely beyond anything the Chitauri had thought possible. Impossible, Krell whispered. You are just a soft skin. You are weak. Taeho finally spoke, his voice quiet but clear enough for everyone in the arena to hear. Weak? The single word carried more weight than any long speech could have. It was not a question or a challenge. It was simply a statement that invited Krell to reconsider everything he thought he knew about humans. What happened next was not really a fight. It was a demonstration. Taeho moved with fluid precision, his actions calculated and controlled. He did not strike Krell with brutal force or attempt to cause unnecessary pain. Instead, he systematically dismantled the Chitauri's defenses with movements that seemed almost like a dance. When Krell tried to use his forearms to grapple, Taeho stepped inside his reach and applied pressure to specific points that caused the alien's limbs to go numb. When Krell attempted to use his natural armor as protection, Taeho found the joints and gaps that every species had, no matter how well protected they appeared. The most frightening part was Taeho's silence. He did not grunt with effort or show any signs of strain. He moved like water flowing around obstacles, always finding the path of least resistance while achieving maximum effect. Within minutes, Krell was on his knees, all 4 arms hanging useless at his sides. He was not seriously injured, but he was completely helpless. Every time he tried to stand or fight back, Taeho would apply gentle pressure to another nerve cluster, and the Chitauri would find himself unable to move. How? Krell gasped. How? Do you know our weak points? Taeho did not answer immediately. He walked in a slow circle around the kneeling alien, his movements still controlled and purposeful. Finally, he stopped in front of Krell and spoke in the same quiet voice. You think humans are weak because we do not have armor like yours. You think we are slow because we do not have 4 arms. You think we are stupid because we are newer to the galaxy. He paused, looking directly into Krell's compound eyes. But you have never asked yourself why a species without armor survived on a world that tried to kill us every day. You have never wondered why beings with only 2 arms learn to use tools better than races with 4 or 6. You have never considered that maybe, just maybe, we learned things that you never had to learn. Around the arena, the alien spectators listened in complete silence. Many were beginning to understand that they had badly underestimated what humans were capable of. Taeho reached down and grasped something from Krell's head. It was the Chitauri's head crest, a bony ridge that was a symbol of honor and status among his people. With one quick motion, Taeho broke it off. The action drew gasps from the Chitauri cadets in the viewing gallery. Taking another warrior's crest was the ultimate symbol of domination in their culture. It meant that the defeated enemy was no longer worthy of respect from their own kind. Taeho held the broken crest in his hand for a moment, then dropped it on the arena floor next to Krell's knees. The sound it made hitting the metal was like a judge's gavel ending a trial. "The match is over," he said simply. Then he turned and walked toward the arena exit, leaving Krell kneeling in the center of the floor surrounded by the wreckage of his weapon and his pride. As Taeho reached the exit, he paused and looked up at the viewing gallery. His eyes found Commander Voss first, then moved across the faces of the alien cadets who had spent months treating humans as inferior beings. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the arena's acoustics. "My name is Kim Taeho. I am human, and I am not weak." Then he walked out, leaving behind an academy full of aliens who would never look at humans the same way again. The medical bay of Nexus Prime had never been so crowded. Doctors and scientists from 6 different species surrounded the examination table where Taeho lay, their instruments beeping and humming as they tried to understand what they had witnessed. Lee Daybin stood at the head of the table, her human medical scanner in one hand and a look of amazement on her face. She had been studying Taeho's readings for 2 hours, and the results made no sense according to any known biology. "His cellular regeneration rate is still elevated," she reported to the gathered medical staff. "The wound in his chest has healed, to a degree that should take weeks, not hours. His blood chemistry shows traces of compounds that our databases cannot identify." Dr. Kilax, the Academy's chief medical officer, examined the scanner readings with his large insectoid eyes. The Mantari physician had treated injuries from dozens of species, but he had never seen anything like this. "The energy discharge should have killed any known life form," Dr. Kilax clicked in his precise medical voice. "The fact that he not only survived but continued to function at peak capacity suggests abilities we have never encountered before." Commander Voss stood near the back of the room, his yellow eyes fixed on Taeho's face. The young human appeared to be sleeping normally, but there was something different about him now. An intensity that had not been there before the fight. "How do you feel?" Voss asked when Taeho's eyes opened. "Fine, sir," Taeho replied, sitting up on the examination table. "Ready to return to duties." "That may not be possible," Dr. Kilax interrupted. "We need to understand what happened to you. Your survival was medically impossible. Your performance afterward was beyond the physical limits of your species." Taeho looked around the room at all the alien faces staring at him. Some showed curiosity, others showed fear, and a few showed something that might have been respect. "I am still human," he said simply. "Whatever happened, I am still the same person." But even as he spoke, Taeho knew that was not entirely true. He could feel changes in his body and mind that he did not fully understand. His senses were sharper, his reflexes faster, and there was a clarity in his thinking that had not been there before. News of the fight had already spread beyond the academy. Within hours, reports were being transmitted to military headquarters on dozens of worlds. The Galactic Alliance Council called an emergency session to discuss the implications of what they were calling the human incident. In the Academy's communication center, Admiral Kane was fielding calls from Alliance officials, military scientists, and intelligence agencies. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Were all humans capable of what Taeho had demonstrated? "We do not know," Kane told the Saurian general who was questioning him over the secure channel. "Human physiology is still not fully understood by our medical staff. We may have underestimated our own species' capabilities." The conversation was interrupted when Jiwoo entered the communication center, his face pale with worry. "Sir, you need to see this," he said, handing Kane a data pad. The pad contained requests for transfer that had been submitted in the past 4 hours. Every human cadet in the academy had received offers from military units across the galaxy. Elite forces that had never shown interest in human soldiers were now competing to recruit them. At the same time, several alien species were quietly requesting that humans be restricted from certain types of military service. The fear was spreading as quickly as the admiration. Back in the medical bay, Taeho was finally cleared to leave. As he walked through the academy corridors, he noticed how other Cadets reacted to his presence. Some stepped aside and watched him with obvious fear. Others nodded respectfully, which had never happened before. He found Krell in the disciplinary holding area, waiting for a formal hearing on the illegal weapon modification. The Chitauri looked up when Taeho entered, his compound eyes dim with shame. "I expected you to come for revenge," Krell clicked quietly. "Why would I do that?" Taeho asked, sitting down across from the alien. "You have already lost everything. Your honor, your standing among your people, your military career. What more could I take from you?" Krell was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke again, his voice barely audible. "I was wrong about humans, we all were." "Yes," Taeho agreed. "But being wrong is not a crime. Trying to kill someone because you were wrong is a crime." Over the following days, the academy struggled to return to normal routine. But everything had changed. Instructors began studying human anatomy and psychology with new interest. Training programs were revised to account for human capabilities that had previously been unknown. The most significant change was in how the human cadets were treated. The harassment stopped completely. Alien cadets who had once viewed humans as weak prey now gave them respectful distance. Some even approached them with requests for training partnerships. Jiwoo found the new attention uncomfortable. "They look at us like we are dangerous animals now," he complained to Taeho as they walked to class. "Maybe that is better than being looked at like prey," Taeho replied. 3 weeks after the fight, graduation assignments were announced. Taeho expected to receive a standard posting to a patrol ship or border station. Instead, he was called to Admiral Kane's office for a private meeting. "Congratulations, Lieutenant," Kane said, using Taeho's new rank. "You have been selected for a special assignment." Kane handed him a set of orders marked with the highest security classification. As Taeho read them, his eyes widened with surprise. "The Terran Special Operations Division?" he asked. "I have never heard of this unit." "It did not exist until last week," Kane explained. "The Alliance Council has authorized the formation of humanity's first elite military unit. You will be one of the founding members." The orders detailed his assignment to a classified facility, where human soldiers would be trained in advanced combat techniques. The goal was to understand and develop the capabilities that Taeho had demonstrated. "Will other humans be able to do what I did?" Taeho asked. "We do not know yet," Kane admitted, "but we intend to find out. The galaxy has learned that humans are capable of things no one expected. Now we need to learn what those things are and how to use them responsibly." As Taeho prepared to leave the academy, he visited the memorial wall where the portraits of famous military leaders were displayed. The human portrait was no longer hidden in a corner. It had been moved to a place of honor, and below it was a new inscription, "Admiral Chen, first of the Terran heroes." But there was something else new on the wall, a small plaque that had been installed just that morning. It read, "Lieutenant Kim Taeho, the human who would not die." Jiwoo and Lee Da-bin came to see him off at the transport dock. His departure was scheduled for 0800, but he had arrived early to avoid crowds. The story of his fight with Krell had spread throughout the academy, and many cadets wanted to meet the human who had changed everything. "Take care of yourself," Lee Da-bin said, giving him a brief hug. "Whatever they have planned for you, remember that you are still human. Do not let them turn you into something you are not." "I will remember," Taeho promised, as his transport prepared for departure. Taeho looked back at the academy one last time. 6 months ago, he had arrived as an unknown cadet from a small colony, hoping to prove that humans deserved respect in the galactic community. Now he was leaving as something entirely different. A symbol of human potential. A warning to those who would underestimate Earth's children. The first of what many hoped would be a new generation of human warriors. The transport engaged its engines and pulled away from Nexus Prime. Through the viewport, Taeho could see the academy growing smaller in the distance. But he could also see something else. Other ships heading toward the academy, carrying human cadets from across Alliance space. Word had spread to every human colony and settlement. Young people were volunteering for military service in numbers never seen before. They wanted to follow in the footsteps of the cadet who had walked out of an arena covered in his own blood. carrying the head crest of his defeated enemy. The legend of human resilience had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. In council chambers and military headquarters across known space, a new phrase was being added to tactical manuals and strategic planning documents. Never underestimate a human. Kim Tae-ho closed his eyes and tried to rest during the long journey to his new assignment. He did not know what challenges waited for him, but he knew one thing for certain. Humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy in a way that would never be forgotten. The age of human warriors had begun,